This is the Inclusivity EQ podcast with Saul Gomez, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on their road to success, and get exclusive access on how to implement their success into your life and business. The Inclusivity EQ podcast is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Saul Gomez.
Hey, are you looking to scale your business from 5 figures to 6 figures or 6 figures to 7 figures? If you are, I have the perfect thing for you. What I want you to do today is I want you to go download a book. This book is going to take you through my 3-pillar system. It's 100% free. All you have to do is go to growfast.cash. I say again, go to growfast.cash, and you're going to be able to download my free international best-selling book, which is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. You can take that book. It's going to help you scale your business to the next level. Again, go download it. Be good, be brief, be gone. Growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to the Inclusivity EQ podcast, where we explore the power and impact of inclusion across various industries and in this thing called life. I'm your host, Saul Gomez, and today's episode, we're talking about breaking barriers, perseverance, and leadership. To help us with this discussion, we have the one and only Rocio Perez, founder, chief leadership officer, life-changing coach, and the creator of the Mindshift system, the world's first self-coaching system. Rocio transformed her life and now guides others to realize their own dreams. And now with nearly 30 years of experience coaching people aged from 4 to 80, Rocio is a life-changing speaker, a best-selling author, and a social entrepreneur. She leads Virtuous LLC and Victor Publishing, which we'll get into a little bit later in the segment, where she provides leadership development to various organizations. Her work focuses on empowering individuals to take charge of their lives and achieve success beyond their wildest expectations. Rocio, welcome to the Inclusivity EQ podcast. I'm thrilled to have you here today.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Saul. You are an amazing leader and full of energy. I always love connecting with you. Thank you for the privilege and the honor to be here with you today.
I'm just really glad to have you here on the podcast. I really feel like you bring a perspective that's often overlooked. We all go through some sort of challenge, right, in our lives, personally or professionally. Some people have it obviously harder than others. And in the end, I think it boils down to overcoming that adversity. And from that context, I'd like to first invite you to share with our listeners a little bit about you, your personal journey, and the challenges you faced along that journey, and how they shape your perspective in life, and ultimately how you got here where you get to do what you do now.
Wow, what a journey. Let's just say, what a journey. I have been blessed by life. So many life experiences. I grew up a little girl with a dream. I wanted to become a teacher, and everything was about school, love, life, learning, everything. Yet the reality was very far-fetched. I grew up in extreme poverty and abuse, going through life being a runaway. And then by the time I was 15 years old, I emancipated myself from my parents so I can go to university to become that teacher that I wanted to be. And on that journey, I learned to coach and mentor people on their own individual journeys, getting them through university life experiences and so forth. It's been a beautiful journey of adversity that has yielded diamonds, acres of diamonds of lessons learned in life as a result of that. And that's what's really led me here to today. I remember there was moments like being 21 and not knowing how to afford to pay for daycare and make it through school, and help my younger brothers get through their own journeys as well as raising a child. And moments like having to rely on the power of my own belief. I was in a car accident at the age of 25 when I thought I had most of it figured out. When it's like I had to rely on my own belief. I'm going to walk. I am walking. I can overcome this, to the battle that I had with cancer by the time of 34. I had the car, the house, the kid, the education, the business, life. And that led me on another journey, a journey that was so beautiful looking back at it and saying, wow, I wouldn't have become who I have become. This journey led me to really bring out what was inside of me, the good, the bad, the ugly. It taught me how to dance with my sorrows, console my pain, and really embrace the gifts of learning and adversity. And so nearly for the past 30 years, I have been coaching people. And there was that point, like I said, that pivotal age at the age of 35, then I go from 34 to 35 and 36, and recognizing nobody's ever coached me. Who has coached me? Nobody has done it. And that's where the journey of the Mindshift game came from. And like, we're with ourselves 100% of the time. Nobody's with us more than we are with ourselves. And I started to see the things. I'm like, oh, I haven't been nurtured. And I don't have the program, you are amazing little girl, or I don't have the program that you can do it, or I'm here to support you, or I believe in you. I had to be that. I had to learn how to believe in myself and to have that praise for myself that every healthy individual has, that sense of connection, belonging, protection. All of that came from that life experience that most people would have like thrown the hat and given up. I was like, bring it on, life. Show it to me, and let's see what's possible with that.
Wow. Was there any one thing, or was it a series of things that sparked that decision or that pivoting? You mentioned age 34 to 35, 36. Was there anything in particular that kind of triggered that or sparked that decision?
There was a moment, and I don't even know why, but let's just say that at the age of 34, being told literally days after turning 34 years of age, you can have a stroke and die any moment.
Wow.
That it was like life was knocking on the door and saying, hey, wake up, girl, wake up and live. You haven't lived. Yes, you're highly educated. Yes, you're this. Yes, you're that. But life is not about accolades, right? Life is not about achievements. Life is about fulfillment. And that's where I didn't feel fulfilled. And the fact that being told that I would die, I have nothing to lose, everything to gain, the fullest expression of myself. And I would say it was my son. The idea that I had to search for a way to heal so that I could have a chance at seeing my son grow up, become his own man, become his own father, become his own professional, everything that was important to him. I wouldn't have that opportunity if I had not stepped back and said, okay, what is worth fighting for?
Your story is so truly inspiring, Rocio. It's clear, right, that these experiences have shaped not only your personal life, but they spilled into your professional life and in the approach that you take with things. And so I kind of want to tap into that and maybe tap into this next question by asking you a question, right? What were your lifelines? I mean, was there people that in your life growing up as you kind of went through these challenges, and especially during that critical age period where you made that pivot, that were your lifelines, that someone that looked like you, that shared that same journey? Were there anything like that represented someone like you that was trying to make that pivot?
It was interesting that you say that, because I don't see many people that were there to help me along the way, much less anyone that looked like me. As a matter of fact, a lot of the people that looked like me were telling me that it was impossible, right? You can't do it. You're not going to achieve it. And I had to rely on the power of belief, as well as the power of diverse communities around me. People that didn't even know that I looked up to them, like my mentor, who was, when we met, a 50-year-old white woman who met, here's a little Chicana 15-year-old with a baby. And like, we couldn't be more worlds apart than what we were then. And to understand that I held on to the belief that this person really cared about me. And so I was going to do well, right? Mm-hmm. And it was years later that I found out, like people like my friend Jack, who I would call when I was on my journey in San Diego of self-discovery and like doing the hokey pokey and turning my life around in a very different way, because to all appearances, I was very successful. Yet from the inside, I hadn't healed the life experiences that needed to be healed. And I would call Jack and I would say, oh my gosh, Jack, like the day looks brighter, it's greener, it's more beautiful. And yet it was this like gloomy day that in the past I would have seen as a gloomy day. And now I had somebody to converse around that. And I would say what was really fascinating about my life experience, Saul, is that all the people that I saw as mentors to me, when I approached them years later, we never did anything for you. We weren't even a mentor to you.
Right.
And to me, it was like they were a mentor in my mind, and I hung on to that. And I would come and I would report, and I'm like, hey, moms and pops, I'm going to go to graduate school. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, then I'd go to graduate school, and then I'd come and show something to them that I was working on or doing and accomplishing and so forth. I would say I borrowed a lot in the power of belief that I had no idea that these people were, although they were great people, they weren't really looking at themselves as somebody who contributed to my life. And
right. I think that's a beautiful lens to see that through, right? Because it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, you're my mentor. I just never told you you were, right? You just are. just by you being you're mentoring me, and that's enough. And it's interesting, and I think it kind of lends to the thought about what if there were people like you that were helping you along the way, right? And so let me pose this question to you. What would you say to someone who asked, well, why is it important to have diverse representation in success stories?
Wow. I would say because it's like diversity of thought, the diversity of culture, the diversity of even speech, connection, the way that we see the world. That would have made a whole world of a difference for me in my world. And I see that 37% of companies are far more successful when we have a diverse talent pipeline, because people bring in solutions that sometimes it would take us a long time to consider or even get to. For instance, I remember coming to the business meeting and people are like, wow, this is such a difficult problem. I saw it as a puzzle. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, move this one here and this one here and circle these around and you're there. And within like 15 minutes, the problem is solved and they're solved.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I can think about my days in the military, right? When we ran into a complex problem of some sort and people are like, oh my God, I need the, widget and the doohickey and this, that, and the other. And I'm just thinking like, what would my Uncle Chewy do? You know what? He'd get this and that and the other and just, snap it together. It doesn't have to be pretty as long as it works. They're like, how'd you come up with that? Right? It's one of those things where I grew up doing this.
Right.
And so I think the pockets are there, right? There's if we choose to see them as gems, if we choose to see people that have something to offer us, sometimes we're unable to because of our circumstances. And so no, it's really interesting for me. I think having that representation is just that, right? Seeing someone else like me that can do it, because the other piece of it is, am I being included into your world or am I having to assimilate into yours?
Right.
I think there's a difference between being included and having to assimilate to. So I think it's a double-edged sword, having people that are successful that look like you, having just representation and success stories. But I think it's also a double-edged sword, right? I don't want to be just like you. I want to be my own version of me, but I also don't want to have to completely subscribe and assimilate to something else, because now, we run the risk of being in groupthink.
Most definitely. And I see that a lot inside of corporations. Sometimes we don't even feel psychologically safe to be ourselves. And it's like, oh, I don't know what people are going to think about me, or like, I don't like people that are different, whatever that may be for the individual. What I'd say, we're losing out on magic that's inside of each and every one of us. There's not another soul in the world like you. There's not another Rocio. And I would say, like, thank you, universe, because I'm a little much sometimes.
I'm a handful.
Right? To bring the magic with us of connection, communication, whatever gifts we bring with us, that they're here, that they're present, that we're excited to be ourselves every point of the way, where we can say, hey, you know what? I have solutions. Imagine when I let go, and I keep on thinking about when you're training for whatever it is that you're training. I remember a friend was training to go to the Grand Canyon, and he would like pack up this backpack and make sure it was really heavy so he could make the trek and go through there. And I think if we just let go of that, whatever it is that we put in there, to be present and to share our gifts and to be okay, be psychologically safe. Sometimes the person that we need to be psychologically safe with is ourselves. Giving up and telling me, what are they going to think about me as a result of what I say? Like, be unashamed, unabashed. Like, hey, you know what? I have so much to contribute. I'm here. And then and knowing that when I say something, it may inspire you to think about something else. That may inspire Joe and Mary and Maria and Miguel, and all of a sudden Trevor has the answer. Because of that, when we understand how it works, we're actually being a contribution to the experience. It's not like saying, hey, only diverse people can do this. The diversity of that, the different perspectives and insights, and people turn around and say, oh, I had never thought about that. What if we did this differently?
Right. No, I think you make a really excellent point, right? That is not diverse people have the answer. It's the diversity of people where the solutions can be born from. And so I think there's a lot to be said about that, right? Creating inclusive workspaces. And I think that's a really good segue to the next point. What are some key lessons that you've learned about creating those inclusive environments for people from varying backgrounds?
Right. That's very good. And it's really to stand and be connected, be related to the human being. So prior to COVID, I would sit down, and years prior to COVID, I would sit down, have conversations with people over meals and sometimes I'd spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get to know people. And it was always like, with their tie and whatever it was. And they're like, business. Sometimes it would take like months and maybe even like a year or two to get to know that person, to even be able to do business, because they were this is who I am. And I shifted one thing for a couple of years prior to COVID. It was like, what's your superpower? I would sit down and get to know the individual. Those barriers would come down immediately. And I'm like, what are the 3 things that you're most proud of? And all of a sudden we're connected. We're leaving and hugging each other and being on each other's corner. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to refer X, Y, and Z person to you, and you'll meet Alex and Mary and Joe. And that's really the power of a leader coming in, taking the time, having a conversation with each individual that they lead, to be interrelated, to understand, to connect to their humanity. I'm not a number. I'm not somebody who's making you money or the widget or whatever. I am a human being first. And as a leader, it is our job to know the humans that support us on the journey, as well as what do they want? What do they want? Who do you want to be? What do you want to learn? Even people that I work with personally or intern for me, it's the same question. What is it that you want to get out of this experience? What would make your life better? And just helping people. As a matter of fact, a young gal that I'm working with right now, same thing. She's like, Rocio, I feel so prepared. I feel so confident. And that's exactly what I'd like for you to do. And I can hear those language patterns coming out. How do you want to communicate? What are the next steps here? This is what I see. As opposed to in the past, people would come in from a different perspective. So get to know your people, get to know what drives them, get to know what's important to them, and get to know where they want to go in order for them to be successful, right? Because it's our job as a leader to lead them to where they want to be.
Gosh, you're answering my questions before I ask them. I was going to ask you, right? What advice would you give to leaders looking to foster more inclusive spaces? And I think you just hit that nail on the head, right? Before you get them the onboarding, before you tell them how it is, before you cram their throats down with policies and instructions and directives, ask them, what do you want to get out of this experience, right? Tell me about it. Let me get to know you. What gets you up in the morning, right? What are your pet peeves? How do you show up to work? What can work do to make your experience better? And just really establishing that rapport. I think that's exactly where you start. That's how you create inclusive workspaces, because you're genuinely trying to reach across and get to know the other person. And when a leader does that, takes the time out to do that, I think that's really impactful.
And yes, it is. And I think if we would take even half an hour to do that, imagine setting, let's say I have 10 leaders. What difference is it going to make to sit down just for one day have meetings with each leader. Well, first of all, think about what it is that I want to know about them. Really authentically know what I'd like to share and let it flow naturally. So I think we're so guarded. There's nothing great about sitting across somebody and wondering what your script was, right? Because sometimes I just had that happen last week. I had a leader who's like, sorry, that's a new script. Hold on a second. Let me check it out. And I'm like, what? You lost me at that. Here's an opportunity for us to connect and really connect from human to human, heart to heart. And we've known that over COVID. I've reached across the pond and connected with people for 25 minutes. And out of those 25 minutes, they talked about themselves 23. I shared about myself 2 minutes. That has led to 3 years of a friendship.
Wow.
Contributions to each other, connecting on an ongoing basis. Why? Because people haven't been heard. And when they're heard and understood and seen, I'm going to repeat the seen part, where we can really see them and feed back to them what makes them happy and really connect with them, they're in your corner from day one.
Absolutely. I'm reminded of this one leader I had, really awesome person. He was killed in Afghanistan, and I was a senior enlisted advisor for a while, leading up to his getting killed. And he had this mantra. His mantra was, "I trust you, now go do your job." And he was a very senior ranking person, C-suite type, and we'd always talk. Right? People would always approach me and say, "Hey, all you guys ever talk about is baseball. What?" You would think you talk to your boss about your career, about other stuff. Mm-hmm. Talk about baseball. We have the same favorite baseball team, but we have this dialogue, right? He'd always ask me, how's Navy doing? I'm like, well, we're helping out the Army, sir. And, we have this dialogue that we kind of exchange. But we talk about strategy. We talk about tactics. We talk about these things through baseball. We weren't from the same city, right? I won't name the baseball team, but we weren't from that same city, but we had an affinity for this baseball team. So we'd hunker on that. And we had such expansive conversations, but they were all hunkered around baseball. And I don't think we would have had the dynamic relationship we had it not been for that. And I had this whole speech prepared when I first got in theater and I was assigned to him. And he stopped me. He said, "Like sports?" I said, "Yes." "Baseball?" "Yep." "What's your favorite team?" He's like, "Oh, me too." And we had a 45-minute conversation about baseball. And I'm like, okay, that was weird. But that was his way of getting to know me and meet me where I was at. And we talk more about sports than we would about anything else. But it always spilled into work. So it was just an interesting dynamic, an interesting relationship we had, a working relationship. And I really appreciated how, as senior as he was, he could come off, his throne, if you will, and just have a simple conversation about stuff. And yeah, we'll get to the work stuff, but let's talk about this, let's talk about that, and make sure that we're both in the right headspace so that we can talk about the work stuff. And sometimes we never got to it because we're talking so much about home stuff, family stuff, and that or the other. But I think it established that rapport. And I never realized what he was doing, but we had such a great relationship. And so I take that away from me and I hold that really close to me because I do want people to feel like they can express themselves. I do want people to feel like they can come to me for things. It's really in the approach. And I think if more leaders saw beyond the script, saw beyond the formalities, and just really connect with people on from a humanity perspective.
Human first.
How much magic can there be there, right? How much more magical can they
Absolutely. And anything that we do. So I just had somebody over the last couple of weeks connecting on LinkedIn and they're like, okay, sales. I'm like, wow, I just finally sent a message. And I'm like, my kind approach hasn't worked. Let me just put on there, the best conversations I've ever had has been where we've connected on a human to human level.
Yeah.
Human to human first, business second.
Right. I want to get into, because that segues us really well into your coaching philosophy, right? That it's people first, it's connecting with people. And so I'd like to tap into that a little bit, right? The Mindshift system and the self-coaching piece of it, because I'm really fascinated about that. So I'd like to, invite you to kind of talk a little bit about that. And for our listeners also, what is the Mindshift system and how did you come up with it? What's it all about?
So the Mindshift system, thank you for asking. It was born when I lived in San Diego. It was a way to coach myself. I remember I had almost 17 years into coaching. I'm like, nobody's ever coached me. And it was such a fascinating experience at that time in my life. So because a lot of people were like, Rocio, your education or your accolades. And I was like, I wish I had your life, right? Looking at it. And when I realized that, again, nobody's ever coached me, and I had to turn myself around, and I'm like, oh, I come from a KP20 education. I was working 0 to 8 was a specialty of mine. I graduated, the oldest student was 80 years of age from an institution of higher ed, and everything in between. And in that process, what I learned is that we are our best coaches. We are our best teachers. We're always with us 100% of the time. And we're the ones who get to do the work. Sometimes we have shame. I don't want to tell my coach or therapist or whoever what's going on with me because of fear of judgment. And it may be like the most minute thing, yet we don't fully open up. Right? The more we open up, the more we can do. The more we open up, the more we can do over and over again. And that's where the game came from, to guide people through affirmation, the proper affirmations, because there's a lot of information out there. This is very in alignment with what we're doing, to get people to connect, listen to their own affirmations, their own meditations, participate in our community, go through the entire game as it's intended to go. And they start to take courageous actions, right? Courageous actions leads to boosting our confidence. It leads to tapping into our mission and vision, because a lot of the time we're going after somebody else's mission or vision. What about mine? Where is it that I want to go or be? And then we start tapping into our power. Yes, I'm powerful, and I have that sense of agency that, in a sense, sometimes we lose. And then we can elevate our energy through that. This is where those are the 5 core things of the game. And yes, we go into deep reflection, we go into adapting, we go into creating the best version of ourselves. When we have those tools right there, anything is possible and probable. And in time, in the perfect time for each and every one of us, we start to coach ourselves, right? Like, we put on the training wheels, we provide the opportunity for people to come in and express themselves and gain the tools day by day, day by day. And then, sure enough, in the perfect amount of time for that person, they've got it. It's like rolling in our heads. I'm like, oh, maybe I need some affirmations right now. Maybe I need some self-care, or whatever it is for each person. So truly believe that people have the ability to be able to coach themselves to whatever success they want to achieve. And it's far greater than somebody coaching us. Yes, we provide coaching, we provide the tools, group setting, super successful to have those changes. And at the end of the day, we're the ones who are with ourselves every single day.
Got it. Now, let me ask you this. Understand a little bit better of how the system works. And that's probably not a simple answer, but as simply as you can put it, what do you say to someone, whether it's on a personal level or in a professional capacity? I don't know myself, whatever. How do you build that within them? How do you create that belief within them? Because I'm wondering, is it creating that blueprint that we don't have, or revising our existing one that may not necessarily be the best blueprint that it can be?
A great question right there, Saul. Sometimes we don't have the blueprint. Bottom line, sometimes we don't have the blueprint. Sometimes it's time to revise our blueprint, because the blueprint that we have isn't giving us the results. So everything served us, no matter what point in our lives. If the blueprint was there, it served us for that particular time in our life. And I think about it like this lobster, right? The lobster has to shed its shell, right? Every animal that has a shell needs to shed it. The same thing with us. The tools that we had, you and I were talking earlier about the toolkit. We've got to let go of what we knew in order to understand what's in front of us and what's important for us to do. So I hold on to the belief and speak belief into people until people can believe it for themselves, right? Sometimes it's speaking life into them and saying, hey, you've got this. And there's other times, and you'll see this when we do our live events, people come up to us and they're like, Rocio, but I don't know. And I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't know. And if you knew, what would it be? And all of a sudden it's like, let me tell you all of the things, if I knew, this is what it would be. It's almost like giving ourselves permission that we haven't given ourselves to be fully expressed. Mm-hmm. I talk about like the expression, anything that is not expressed, it's repressed.
Interesting. Now, is that like binary from the perspective of it either is or it isn't? It's either repressed or expressed. Is there an in between?
I think it's sometimes we think we have fully expressed something and we haven't.
Mm-hmm.
You get that pain, that ball in your throat when you're saying something. I don't know if you ever had that, but I recently had it myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It was all the undelivered communication. It's either one or the other. And especially when we feel something in our body, when we're attempting to express ourselves or when we are expressing ourselves, that there's something that landed somewhere, some communication that landed in a way that we didn't want it to land in our body.
Absolutely. I asked that because I guilty of it myself, right? We either express it. I've either expressed what I have in my throat or I just compartmentalize it until and unfortunately, a lot of times the intended recipients aren't the ones that get that expression. And so I've had to really personally had to look back and take an inventory of who all I vomited on and what did I learn from that, right? How do I reel that in a little bit more? Because I don't want to react. I want to be able to respond. And I think that's where coaching helps people, right?
Oh, yes.
Respond versus react.
Right.
And I'm wondering, in your capacity, I know you've coached people from very young age to a very seasoned age. And so how do you adapt to the varying age, right? Because if you think about the different generations and where those generations come from, there's certain conditioning that come with those, right?
Right.
Boomers necessarily don't complain. They just, whatever the job needs to get done, I'm going to go do it. I'm not going to complain. And, some generations are not as adept to that. Mm-hmm. Some will refuse, to do anything unless you're accommodating them. And sometimes that's just personality driven. So mm-hmm. I guess the question in there somewhere is how do you adapt to the different age groups or the different types of people that you coach?
That's a great question. We were all children, and the age of the subconscious mind is 7 years old. The more basic that we can keep it, the easier it's going to be that the communication is going to be heard. So, like, children have made me an extraordinary communicator.
Really?
Children taught me, when I go coach children and I must explain a concept to them and they're 7 years old, I learn in real time how it lands to them. I have 10-year-old children that were walking around who are now 13 and 15 and 25 who are like, I'm the captain of my ship. How do you get a 10-year-old to tell you that they're the captain of their ship? Right? Because they start to see the impact of their actions. They start to see themselves as creators in the world, that it's probable. And the most important thing, as you said, how do I talk with somebody from 0 to 80 to do it, right? I see the impact at 80, so I've gone backwards. If I go backwards and I discover what that impact point is, I can lead them in a faster way, in some way, right? And seeing that. And I know, I'll give you an example. My grandson was about 18 months. And I threw him up in the air and he was having a great time. And all of a sudden I throw him up in the air again and he's shaking. And I'm like, that is not a good thing. That is a pattern that if he learns that pattern, he's going to have fear of heights potentially. And so making it a fun experience. So communication takes many different forms. And as we know, communication is not always verbal. It is our physiology. It's our intonation. It is our body language that speaks volumes. So connecting people on a human to human level, roughly at the most basic level, we could all understand basic life experiences. Coaching does not need to be complex. Connection does not need to be complex.
Looking to grow your business beyond 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures plus? What I want you to do is go download this book. The title is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. It will help you grow your business past 5, 6, and 7 figure. Go download the book today, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. rocio.cash and download the book for absolutely free.
It's impressive how adaptable that what you just said is, right? And I guess the more and more you do it, the more you're able to kind of fine tune and fast track people and get them to where they need to get to. And I guess those transformations in of themselves, when you're able to see them and witness them down the line, it's got to be gratifying and remarkable to see that change and that response and the success that follows, right?
And speaking that belief into people, I'm going to share a story about a gal that I met many years ago, a decade to be precise, over a decade. And I remember we were at a warrior camp, and it's this like, just consider like a military training, except we paid for it. And we're going, I'm like, okay, we're all going to be these amazing people. And I remember this gal, and we'll call her Mary for safety reasons, as they say, to protect this, to right. Keep the innocent safe. And Mary could barely like walk. She was struggling, and she was walking like a little duck, barely one foot in front of the other. She was 67 years old. Now we had to go up these peaks. We had to go 5 peaks. Mary couldn't even make it to the mountain, forget the peaks. And I remember like, wow, as a leader, she's got to make it, right? I'm already carrying a life board and more weight on my body than I can handle. And I'm like, okay, Mary, you've got this. And speaking life into her, taking her through a whole process. She made it to the 4th peak. The next day, right, we're celebrating her, right? I was just like happy to get off that mountain because I had to carry even more weight. Some people gave up at the very top, and they're like, I'm not going to carry all that weight back. I'm just going to leave it here. And I'm like, wow, now I've got life board. I've got double the weight that I was, and I couldn't even handle the first amount of weight. But the next day, what Mary did shocked everyone, especially me. I was, as a team member, I'm hanging out, and here she starts going up, and we're supposed to go up this wire, go up the pole to go across the wire. She couldn't even get to the 3rd, what do you call that, like, area to hold herself into it. And I'm like, you've got this, Mary, you've got, and like speaking life, you've got this, keep going, you've got this, keep going, you've got this, keep going. She went all the way across that wire. I couldn't even do it. Who she became after that experience was amazing. She was unrecognizable. Wow. I see her, this was in July. I see her in August, and everything had changed. And like fast forward, and then we go into March, and I see her at an event, and she's like Rico swap. She's moving in ways that her whole physiology, she had done a complete makeover of herself. And that's what's possible with speaking life into people and helping people connect with themselves, find a greater purpose, and to find the belief in themselves that's possible and probable for them.
Wow. That's such a remarkable success story, right? To be able to see that and witness that. I think it's, a lot of things, but if anything, validating in the work that you're doing. And man, that's awesome, Rocio. That's awesome to have been able to witness that. Now I want to tap into another aspect of what you do, because we've talked about the Mindshift game system. We've talked about your coaching. We've talked a little bit about your background and your story, but there's a lot more to that, right? And so I want to tap into some of your other pieces that go beyond just the coaching and in a broader perspective, the entrepreneurship piece, right? Yes, the Mindshift system is, it's a game and you own it and all that, but specifically, you're the founder of Virtuous LLC and Victor Publishing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Most definitely. Thank you. And Virtuous is where the game lives. That's the company that the game lives under. We have a TV show, which has a coaching channel. You can find us there. Podcast that's upcoming. We have so many different things, coaching, training. And then there's Victor Publishing, which we've had the privilege. You're one of our co-authors under the Fortaleza brand. And to me, it's like bringing those stories that really connect with our heart, that make us come alive, where we can connect and say, wow, Saul did that, Rocio did that, I can do that. To release anything that's not us, That's what these stories are there to serve us. And we do have a couple of upcoming books. We have Fortaleza de la Mujer Latina. It's for Latina women to really tap into their strength so that they can continue to move forward. We can inspire each other. We're inspired by a phrase, an idea. We're inspired by a story, the journey, following people. So that's what Victor Publishing does. It's actually named after my son. And it's a pretty exciting experience to see people from all over the world respond so positively to our books.
So, and I mean, not that this is like a marketing plug or anything like that, but I'm curious, what would you say is the value add that these two companies bring to the market and to, people, whether it's professional or personal development?
Definitely. I'd say that they're being given an opportunity to see a vision, to see a dream, to see themselves in a future, to walk into a future, to create the life that they love and desire, that anything and everything is possible and probable, that they have the sense of agency to create their version of a happy, healthy, and prosperous life for themselves. That's the value of these companies, that they actually were born. First and foremost, I was working on a company to bring it up, Morning Dew Publishing, back in the day. And then I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so everything changed at that moment. These came at the perfect timing. I feel like I had to become that diamond for myself before I can go out and do this. And through the coaching and honing in on my craft, honing in on me, owning my story, right, has allowed me to be able to help people connect with themselves in ways that they wouldn't have been able to connect had I not been vulnerable or authentic about my own life experiences. And let me tell you, there's a moment in time you can put me on a stage and talk about marketing and media and whatever. And although I connected with my audience, there's nothing more powerful than the personal story, what the individual can do, what's possible for them.
Absolutely. And there's a couple of things that come to mind, right? I remember we did a retreat some time ago now, right? It's been a while.
It's been a little over a year.
Yeah. And somewhere between that and now, probably around that time, I picked up on a phrase that you use quite often. It's I get to, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have to. It's not a chore. I get to do these things, right? I get to go out and do my job. I get to go out and, write this book. I get to go and engage with people. And so in that spirit, how do your experiences influence your approach to just entrepreneurship in general? Because sister, it's not for the faint of heart. Being an entrepreneur is...
Really? Tell me more about that.
Right. I'm learning that. And I think it's for me, at least, it's part of my conditioning, right? I know no other way other than to feel gratified when I've done hard work.
Right.
But I think I try to see it from a different lens, right? I'm able to express what I want. I'm able to give something to the world. I'm able to offer something that I hope to be able to pay forward. And I take some of that conditioning with me in my own experiences to drive, serve as a driving force to what it is that I want to do, because I do want to make a positive impact. So I say all that to ask you, how do your own personal experiences, your background, your upbringing, your experiences in your 30s, being a mother, how do all those things influence your approach to entrepreneurship?
Wow. So first of all, entrepreneurship, like you said, it is not for the faint of heart. And I feel like I've been an entrepreneur since I was 5 years old. I was selling copper to the junkyard down the street. That was the start of my life. So from a perspective of, I don't know much about being inside of an organization, corporation, although I've worked in there. The vast majority of my life has been an entrepreneur. And with that being said, I get to create something that's far greater than myself, that touches, moves, and inspires me every day. And I would say there was fear at one point. There was. I remember over 15 years ago, I was standing outside of the Tivoli here in Colorado. I had just walked out of an event, and my friend Juan came up to me and said, like, Rocio, why did you come and sit in these seats? What's wrong with you? You should have been on the stage. And I'm like, I get to learn. I get to be in the same seats, because if I'm not honing in on myself and growing, then there's nothing there, right? The moment that I think I know it all is the day that I know nothing. And I live by the words. I'm like, I'm always in the seat. The other thing that I live by is that I'm always in the process of becoming. because everything continues to evolve. We evolve as a person every day. Do we get different? Do we get a wrinkle? Do we get older? Yes, there's always a change in us. The day that we think that the growth is at its max is the day that we stop growing. And if we're not growing, what are we doing? We're dying, right? We're going backwards. And so I feel like my life experiences have led me, and they have been such a gold mine and acres of diamonds, to be able to connect with people from a true place, a place of empathy, to understand, like, I know where you've been. I see you. I hear you. And I can feel what you want. Allow me to show you the way, because it is a privilege. You know, I went from, hey, let me coach you, let me help you, to, are you ready to help yourself in your own success? Right? Because that's what it's about. I'm not selling you a coaching program. I'm selling you your future. Not only am I selling it to you, I'm sitting there with you, guiding you along the way, ensuring that you have the knowledge, the skills, the abilities to be able to have and enjoy the success that you want. Because let's be frank, how many people have gotten to where they want and all of a sudden they've lost it and they don't know how to build it? I remember years ago sitting right next to an ex-football player who had been in the Super Bowl. They had won the Super Bowl multiple times. He's sitting right there to my left. And he's like, I don't even know how I achieved it. I don't know how I got the success. I don't know how to recreate it. And I'm like, wow, that was one of the things that I seen in my life when people don't understand how to recreate their success, is because they really didn't learn it. Sometimes it was luck. Sometimes it was chance, whatever it may have been. The most important thing is that we get to learn.
Absolutely. I'm going to go off topic here for a little bit, because I think it's something that I hope resonates, one, with our audience, with our listeners, but I think it's something I struggled with, and something I still kind of navigate through sometimes, right? That right there, what you just said, lends to a lot of times the imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. Because I survived through it. And here's, my philosophy on living versus surviving, right? We survive for so long, we forget how to live. And if there isn't some kind of fuse lighting us, and usually that fuse is something negative, conditioned to, and then when things are great, I'm either complacent or I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so I think it's important to take note of that and understand that, because if we don't, there's this proverb that says, rowing upstream without a paddle, or life without progression is like rowing upstream without a paddle. You're going to regress, and life's going to keep on going by. Right. But I think, to your point, if all you've ever learned is how to survive through things, you might learn a couple things, but your brain isn't there in receive mode to learn. It's trying to survive. And so it's very, I think, elementary, our cognitive ability to learn something, because we're just surviving through it. And then when we have to do it again, oh my God, it's happening again, versus being able to have the discernment of what's happening for me here. What am I learning? Right. What am I going to get out of this? How is this going to serve me? So that it's not so daunting. So it's not this, oh my goodness, type of a feeling, right? The pucker factor. And instead it's like, let's figure this puzzle out, because I've been here before. Right. So let's navigate this thing. And I think there's a difference in that.
I love what you're saying right there. There is a difference. Some of us have only known survival mode. I knew survival mode. Okay. The reason I went from 6th grade to university is because I was in survival mode. The reason why I was able to raise a child and make that decision at the age of 14, I was in survival mode. The reason I got through university, the work, the house, the car, the life, the whatever, I was in survival mode. And when I turned 35, that I moved to San Diego, it was like, I'm no longer in survival mode. And I didn't know how to create out of not being in survival mode, being in peacetime. I'm like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. And I didn't even know that was the case. I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, what am I doing getting up at 6 o'clock? I should have been at the gym at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because I was a single mother. And what that leads us to is, like, we're in high thriving survival mode. And what that leads to is illness. because the body cannot be in survival mode and thrive for a long period of time. Our organs, in a way, shut down to preserve the life of the individual, right? That's the way that our bodies function. And unless we get ourselves out of survival mode, which is what we teach through the Mindshift system, the Mindshift experience game, everything that we do under the Mindshift brand is to share with people to reconnect with themselves. Because unless we reach self-efficacy, we cannot achieve success. It may not be long-lasting. Then a health crisis comes on board. We haven't been paying attention. What happens? Something happens to our loved ones, and we don't know how to manage that. We may not even be seeing the things that are really realistic in front of us if we haven't achieved that self-regulation. And I know I've stopped. And even recently, this year, I was driving down the highway and I just dropped off a friend at the airport. And I realized, I'm like, wow, Rocio, did you just pay that consultant double? And I did. I couldn't see it because guess what? I was in survival mode, right? It's like that pace, go, 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 go. I can't even see what's going. And we don't recognize that. So if anything that I would love for people to take away, self-efficacy is the name of the game. Self-efficacy is the name of the game. To ensure that we're completely aligned with ourselves, that means that we've gone from self-care to self-reflection to self-awareness to self-regulation, even forgiveness. Sometimes we're carrying things that we shouldn't be carrying, somebody else's things. And sometimes it's even our own. I did something and I'm afraid to say anything about it. So for me, that's the power of success is to achieve, because anybody can have the time, the energy, the money, the resources, the education, the networks, the experience, the everything, and not be able to achieve what they desire.
Write that one down, folks. Self-efficacy. It's the key ingredient in all this. Wow, it's such fascinating stuff, Rocio. Your entrepreneur journey is nothing short of fascinating, and I'm curious with all that, right? The coaching, the Mindshift game, the different businesses that you have. How does all that tie into the work that you have done with other established organizations? I mean, Anzo, HLX, Prospanica are just some of the many organizations that you work with. How do you take that and how does that translate into working with all these organizations, if you don't mind sharing a little bit?
Oh, definitely. Thank you. And it's to show them the tools in real time. My work is about experiential learning. It is about the experience. When we give somebody information, they may remember 5 to 10% of it. When we guide them through an experience, they really get it. The storytelling comes into component, and it's working with the leaders. What does it look like to work with the leaders inside of a webinar or conference setting, or even coaching aspect of it? I've had teams that have leveled up multiple times at really high levels. Why? Because we took the time to work with each individual to discover in such a subtle way, because most of us are like, oh, I have imposter syndrome. Oh, okay, great. You have imposter syndrome. How do you get out of it? And to be that type of a coach that can subtly move that person through that process without even having to point, oh, this is what I see. It's like, okay, let's work on it in real time to transcend it and be able to see at the end of the entire program, here's where this person was at in the beginning, here's where they're at midpoint, and here's where they at the very end of the program, and seeing the blessings for them. So do a lot of coaching, training, keynotes, combination of all of those, as well as helping people. We have even the Mindshift University. People can guide themselves through their own process. We have the game, like who would like to guide themselves through their own process to discover what makes them tick and how to strengthen themselves. So all of our tools are there to help people. And that's how we work with organizations like HP and the big organizations around the world that will keep private. Most of them, that's how we do the work and be able to present on a global level to help people achieve that.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, right, leaders have this thing about, at least in my experience, where, yeah, I'm doing this for my people, I'm doing this for my organization. And I often push back and say, well, you're part of this organization too, right? So not only should this be about you, but you should be modeling all these things, right? If you truly believe it and get behind it, then how better of a way to express that than to model that behavior, model what you're talking about, model what you're trying to push to everyone. Because it's just as much about the leader than it is about the organization. There's got to be that alignment. If I'm a leader and I'm saying work-life balance, but I'm at work till 9 o'clock at night every night, my assistant's going to feel compelled to work late. Everybody else around is going to feel compelled to work late. What does that say about alignment when I'm saying work-life balance, but I'm here till 9 o'clock at night every night? Am I really working hard, or do I just have a time management issue?
Or am I sending even my team to go have coaching or training or whatever? What about me, right? It starts with us. I always feel like we could bring it back to the basics, to family. What if I look at it as a mother? I need to learn how to be a mother, right? First and foremost. So I go on training. Hey, guess what? By the way, 19-year-old with a 4-year-old, I went to my first parenting classes at that age because I felt it was important for my son to understand and for me to understand child development, the way to properly parent a child. And, properly parent, I think there's always coming in and out, adding new tools to the toolkit, depending on the age and what works. And what worked today doesn't mean it worked tomorrow. But really to understand myself first, understand children second, and be able to know how to guide them and lead them to who I see them to be.
And I know we're talking about children and all that, right? But I'm thinking, and I'm certainly not saying that leaders and the workforce are a parent-child relationship.
No.
From an endearing standpoint, right? That level of care, that level of commitment, right? That level, that sense of parental obligation that we have to our kids, we should have to our organizations. And I say should because who am I to tell anybody? But I feel like as a leader, I want to have that same drive to want my employees to succeed, just like I want my kids to succeed, just like I want my friends to succeed, much as how much I should want to see myself succeed. And so I think it's important for leaders to understand that. And I guess from that perspective, what about inclusion? Like, how would you socialize, or what would you say to leaders to say, well, I'm a leader, I'm doing these things. How can inclusion help me sharpen my leadership iron, if you will? How does inclusion make me a better leader?
Wow, it's such a great thing, right? To be able to see people for where they're at and where they're not, and where they can be, including people, to be able to have conversations, to get really interested in including them in conversations. I think about a great facilitator is a great leader as well. A person that can bring in the best. After we've had that connection, I know that Margaret is not having the conversation. How do I include her as part of this conversation? How do I get her thoughts, her insights, let her bring her humanity into work? Because at the end of the day, we are human beings first and foremost. And we've mentioned that previously here. The most important thing is to be able to connect and say, hey, inclusion brings a different insight. It allows the person to not only be here, and we've all heard that, it's like bringing somebody to dance, yet belonging for the individual is not inviting them to dance. Anybody can do that. To me, belonging and inclusion means being able to invite them to provide their music and dance to their music. It's not about me inviting them to dance. It's about them inviting me to dance to their music.
I think that's so well put. A lot of times people talk about, oh, we're very inclusive, we're a very diverse organization, and the numbers show that. But when you look at where those numbers are, a lot of times the diversity is at the lower levels, and the higher you get to the food chain, the higher you get in the hierarchy, the more homogenous it is. And so I think, from that perspective of inclusion, it's one is knowing yourself and knowing your own biases, right? Knowing what your own belief systems are, and then how do you show up? And I think if leaders are open-minded to that and have that introspective look about how do I see life through it and how does that land on other people, I think that in itself will make them better leaders, right? And when we talk about inclusivity, I think it's really about what does it sound like? Because we can talk about I'm inclusive, right? Yeah, I brought in women. I brought Rocio into the boardroom table. I even gave her a seat to sit at the table, and I even let her speak. But when Rocio's speaking, thanks, Rocio. Hey, Mike, what did you say? Oh, that's awesome. That's really fascinating. Let's have a conversation about that.
Yes. Or even the fact, like, even for me, I remember the boss who taught me so much indirectly of what not to do as a leader. I remember a single mother, right? And he would send me traveling on parent-teacher conference. I'm a single mother. I'm telling you that I'm a single mother. I'm telling you before you send me, I'm telling you the reasons why I cannot go. Can I contribute at a different level? Yes. Maybe I can prep the meetings, prep the material, prep the presentation, do something within my ability and still be included. Doesn't necessarily mean that I have to go do it, right? And so when we look at inclusivity, it's like, don't give somebody the responsibility that they cannot take because it's outside of their capacity. In order for them to do them, if it's going to hurt them or their loved ones, if it's going to impact them, then we're not being inclusive. We're not understanding and meeting people where they're at. And I've had that happen with a number of leaders throughout my life. I remember 6 years old, my son was 6 years old, and he was going to be dropped off across the university. And my boss was like, it's 4:00, I'm ready to go. And she's like, you've got to stay here. And I'm like, I have my son across the street. No, I need to talk. No, wow, you need to talk with me? That is great. We'll do that once I pick up my 6-year-old son from across the street. We can have that conversation, right? To really look at, how is my communication landing on others? Is that really inclusive? Is my way of being, is my tonality, is my body language being inclusive of people?
I'm chuckling because I remember, so part of my military career, most of my military career, I spent in an operational environment, right? Deployed, I did about 13 deployments. And so I was gone more than I was home. And then at a certain point, I was moved into kind of a more sterile environment, desk job, staff duty type stuff. And what had made me very successful and fast track my career in the expedition environment, failing my career in this new HR, very corporate-like environment that I was on, because it was a very different way of leading. It was a very different way of executing the mission. And I had in my mind, well, I'm a leader, I've been successful, and this is the way I'm going to lead. And that was my first lesson in adaptive leadership, right? Mm-hmm. As a leader, it's up to me to meet people where they're at, because they might not have, to your point, the capacity to be where I need them to be. And that's my job as a leader, to develop them and coach them and mentor them to where they need to be. And so I think there's a lot to be said about adaptability. And in that, I need to be open-minded, because I have one way of thinking. I need to reach out to other people that are not like me, that don't look like me, that don't have my experience, because I'm going to get the same leadership lessons, and they're the ones that are tanking my career right now. So I need to go outside of that and go find some new, some new grounds to learn. And it wasn't until I learned that lesson many years later.
It took a moment.
Hey, some of us, some of us have hard heads.
It's so fascinating that you say that.
I think it's adaptability, right? And that made me a better leader. And I'd like to say it made me a better person, a better friend, a better father, a better husband, just a better version of me, because I took it into the personal, right? From the professional to the personal, and try to meet people where they're at. You
bring up such an amazing point right there. And that is also, as a leader, I must have trauma-informed leadership. What does that mean? And some people misunderstand trauma. Let me give a definition of trauma that brings it to the basics. If you were alive during COVID, we've had trauma. Okay. One way or another, we couldn't go. We've watched people die, loved ones die, the world in complete chaos. That's trauma, right? It unearths things inside of us. Somebody loses a loved one. If I don't know how to deal with that, to have that conversation, then it's not going to help. I remember this amazing leader I was brought in to essentially help him. And gentleman was like the best at his craft that they had. And they could not afford to lose him, and they could not afford to lose the team. Yet he wasn't empathetic, because it wasn't within his programming. It wasn't within that. And I get that. And it took us some time, and we got there, all in perfect timing for him. And I remember him being so proud, calling me on one of our coaching calls and saying, you know what, Rocio, like, I was about to fire this person. They have been here 6 months. They've left 3 times. Didn't leave a note, didn't say anything. Well, he came to ask, is everything okay? And discovered that this person had a health condition. And what they would do is go to the doctor. they would leave. They couldn't even think beyond. See, a lot of people think like, well, they weren't being responsible. Yeah, I get it. Yet when you have trauma-informed leadership, you understand that that person didn't have the capacity to think beyond their situation, their pain, whatever it is that they were experiencing, they didn't have the capacity. Imagine what difference that would make for the leader to know that. Maybe I give permission. Hey, you know what? Next time, have an email prepared, just hit send, bottom line. Hit send, right? That's future. I just want to make sure you're doing okay. I want to make sure that, if there's anything that you need. Imagine a world like that is not only inclusive, it's understanding. It is having the foresight to understand that things are going to happen and to give us permission to be humans. We are not robots, okay? Let me just say that. And we think that everybody should act and be in a particular way. Everyone is different.
Absolutely. We are. And I think when we are able to realize that, accept that, and see the positive in it, then we can prime ourselves. We can be primed ourselves to receive the gifts, to receive the gems that there are to have. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to be able to realize that and get to that place. And for you in your shoes as a coach, a business owner, seeing people go through these journeys, it's got to be an amazing feeling.
It's absolutely rewarding. I wake up to know that people's lives are better because it extends beyond leadership in the workplace. It's leadership in our family. It's the leader in my finances. It's the leader everywhere. And that's the key to success, that when we see it, that it impacts what we do, who we be. This is a way of being. As we tap into our own innate wisdom, it is a way of being. We already have all the answers inside of us. And we can walk around knowing that we're the best version of ourselves. And we're always in the process of becoming. There's always another level. I'm going to be, right now, not just the best mother. I'm the best grandmother, right? I'm the grandmother that's going to be running after the children and having fun with them. Why? Because I get to create those life experiences that we are always growing as individuals, and we can connect and move and create and do whatever it is that we choose to.
Or not. Right. Or not. It's always, a choice. It's always an option.
And sometimes because we can doesn't mean we should, right? It may impact somebody in a negative way, or it may even impact ourselves.
Right. I think timing is everything, right? And there's a time and place for everything. And I think, I wish we had a part two, right? And I'd like to invite you to come back and we can have a conversation about a bunch of other things that we talked about before. But I think this is such a fascinating conversation about self-discovery. And in that, finding that ability to be inclusive, right? So that we meet people where they're at, not just for leaders, but just people in general. When we're able to be selfless enough to meet people where they're at, that will then beget, I hope, it's my hope that we'll beget more of that and we can meet each other where we're at. And I think that starts the beginning of something really, really extraordinary, whether it's personal or professional.
Beautifully said. It is about where they're at. And meeting people where they're at for the very first time, every time we meet them.
True statement. A lot can happen in a day. A lot can happen in a week, in a month, in a year.
24 hours, even 2 hours, 30 minutes.
Exactly. The pass is what, 3 seconds away?
Right? There's the pass.
Listen, Rocio, your insights on just everything that you do on leadership, especially on inclusivity and really the things that you're doing are remarkable and really enlightening. And as we wrap up, I'd like to hear about your vision for the future and any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners concerning how they can go about realizing their dreams in a more inclusive world.
Wow, lots of amazing things. So my thoughts for the future is that our game, our system, our experience, support, the work that we're doing is in every home, every community, every school, every organization, that everybody has the tools to be able to transform their lives and create the life that they love and desire. That is my vision for the future. I would say as we continue to move forward, people, you have it. Everything that you need is inside of you now. Come to us. We are here to guide you, support you on your own individual, unique journey. And we're more than happy to connect. So please connect on any of our social media channels. Give us a call, send us an email, whatever that may be for you. And to know that the power to transform the life is within you, like your life, your family's life. They say that each of us impacts 256 people. Let's go impact ourselves so that the 256 people can be impacted, and let the ripples of our impact echo through eternity, because they do, through our children, through our teachings, through our life, through who we show up as. I would say, if I had to leave somebody with a quote, I would say that we're always in the process of becoming, and that we get to be who we came here to be. We get to be who we came here to be. Who we came here to be is far more powerful than who we became to be as a result of our life experiences. And when we shed the emotions out of that and see the acres of diamonds, that those are actually the greatest gifts for us in the world.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Now, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think it's fitting. So don't choke me out for it. I'm really fascinated to hear about your upcoming books. One is I Shouldn't Be Alive Today, and the other one is Ripple Effects. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my, yes. So I Shouldn't Be Alive Today is the story of my life. It's been my life's work to share the life experiences of going through childhood trauma, going through a journey as a teenage mother, and sharing with the world, like, hey, these are the nuggets, the things that I learned along the way. Yes, that was the adversity. Here's how I overcame it. It gives tools, resources. That's an upcoming book. And then Ripple Effects too, which we're super proud of. That book is to help us tap into a different level of ourselves. It's like the daily practice. As I continue to practice and hone in on myself, discover myself, practicing gratitude. If we know that practicing gratitude creates even more extraordinary things, even for 60 seconds of gratitude could change the day. Imagine if we're doing that moment to moment, every time that we become conscious to it, that those practices change lives. And that's what we're here to do. Wow.
That's beautiful. I can't wait to read them, get a hold of them and read them. Love everything that you do, Rocio. It's been such a treat having you. Any final thoughts before we let you go? And also, how can people get a hold of you?
Yes. Well, I'm going to be here giving out my email. So it's like rocio@themindshiftgame.com. or info@themindshiftgame.com. That's how people can get a hold of me, connect with me. And I think would say like my final thought, do the work now, lead the way, do the work. And the work is to discover who you came here to be, to discover the tools and resources and assets that you have within you that you may have not tapped into yet, that the moment that you tap into it will change your life completely. You will be unrecognizable.
Love it. Thank you so much, Rocio. Well, folks, that does it for this one. We've been talking with Rocio Perez about breaking barriers, perseverance, and leadership. And I hope you took notes, because I sure did. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Inclusivity EQ podcast. Until next time, stay open-minded, be curious, and continue to build your own Inclusivity EQ. I'm your host, Saul Gomez. Catch you on the flip side. Out here.
Hey, we all want to scale our business. Hey, I have the answer for you today to help you do that. If you're looking to scale from 5, 6, even 7 figures and beyond, book called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. I'm going to give it to you for free. All you have to do is type in growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and you can download the book for absolutely free. I hope the book helps you this year. Take your business to the next level. Again, go grab the book, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. I wish you the best and grow, scale, and win.
Thanks for listening to the Inclusivity EQ podcast with Saul Gomez. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Dear God.